Alara traced the worn spine of a first-edition copy of Wuthering Heights, her fingers dancing over the faded gold lettering. The afternoon light filtering through the library's arched windows cast long shadows across the quiet reading room. Outside, the small town of Havenwood was, as always, peaceful. It had been her home for over 20 years, and the library her sanctuary for nearly as long. Here, surrounded by stories, she found a solace that the world outside often failed to provide. Especially since David's passing 5 years ago. David. The thought of him, even now, brought a familiar ache to her chest, a dull throb that time had not entirely erased. Their life together had been a tapestry woven with shared passions, a love for local history, quiet evenings spent reading aloud, and the comforting rhythm of everyday life. He had been a local history enthusiast. He was the extrovert drawing her the introvert out of her shell. She glanced at the framed photograph on her desk. David, smiling, his eyes crinkled at the corners, standing in front of the Havenwood Historical Society. He had been deeply involved in the community, unearthing forgotten stories and sharing them with anyone who would listen. Alara, content to remain in the background, had always been his most attentive audience. A gentle chime from the front desk broke her reverie. Mrs. Henderson, the volunteer librarian, was gesturing towards a young woman standing near the entrance. Alara smoothed down her simple cardigan and walked over, a polite smile gracing her lips. "Alara, dear," Mrs. Henderson whispered, "this young lady is here to see you. She's a writer, interested in David's work." The young woman stepped forward, extending a hand. "Hello, Mrs. Davies. My name is Chloe. Chloe Richards." Her voice was bright and enthusiastic, her grip firm. She had a cascade of auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes, a striking shade of green, sparkled with energy. "It's lovely to meet you, Chloe," Alara replied, a flicker of curiosity igniting within her. "Please call me Alara. I wasn't aware anyone was writing about David." "Well, I'm hoping to," Chloe said, her smile widening. "I'm working on a project about local historians, and David's contributions to Havenwood are truly remarkable. I'd be honored if you'd be willing to share some of your memories and insights." Alara hesitated. David had always been a private man, despite his public persona. She had respected his need for solitude, even when she hadn't fully understood it. The thought of opening up his life to a stranger felt intrusive. "I'm not sure I'm the right person," Alara said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "David was a very private man. I wouldn't want to misrepresent him." "I understand," Chloe replied, her tone softening. "But from what I've gathered, you were his closest confidant. Any insights you could offer would be invaluable. I'm particularly interested in his work on the Havenwood Mill history." Alara's interest was piqued. David had poured countless hours into researching the old mill, meticulously piecing together its story from fragmented records and faded photographs. It had been a labor of love, a testament to his dedication to preserving the town's heritage. "He was very passionate about the mill," Alara conceded, a hint of warmth creeping into her voice. "He spent years researching it." "Exactly," Chloe exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. "That's the kind of dedication I want to capture. I'm not looking for sensationalism, Mrs. Alara. I simply want to understand what drove him, what made him so passionate about Havenwood's history." Alara studied Chloe's face, searching for any hint of insincerity, but all she saw was genuine enthusiasm and a deep respect for David's work. Perhaps, she thought, sharing her memories wouldn't be such a betrayal after all. Perhaps it would be a way to keep David's spirit alive, to ensure that his contributions to Havenwood were not forgotten. "All right, Chloe," Alara said, a tentative smile forming on her lips. "I suppose I could spare some time. When would you like to start?" Chloe beamed. "How about tomorrow morning? I can come by any time that's convenient for you." "Tomorrow morning would be fine," Alara replied. "Around 10 o'clock? Perfect," Chloe said, pulling out a small notebook and jotting down the time. "Thank you so much, Alara. I really appreciate this." As Chloe turned to leave, Alara couldn't help but notice the way she moved, with a youthful energy and confidence that reminded her of a time long past. A time when she too had felt the world stretched out before her, full of endless possibilities. The following morning, as rain pattered softly against the library windows, Alara found herself strangely nervous. She had spent the evening sifting through old photographs and letters, rediscovering forgotten memories and reliving moments of joy and sorrow. It was like opening a Pandora's box, unleashing a torrent of emotion she had carefully suppressed for years. At precisely 10 o'clock, Chloe arrived, carrying a large tote bag filled with notebooks and recording equipment. She greeted Alara with a warm smile and immediately set about preparing for the interview. "I hope you don't mind if I record our conversation," Chloe said, placing a small digital recorder on the table. "It just helps me to keep track of everything." "Not at all," Alara replied, trying to appear nonchalant. Chloe began by asking about David's early life, his family background, and what had initially sparked his interest in local history. Alara found herself drawn into the conversation, reminiscing about their first meeting at a historical society meeting, his infectious enthusiasm, and the countless hours they had spent together poring over old documents and maps. "David had an incredible gift for bringing the past to life," Alara said, her voice softening with affection. "He could take a dusty old document and weave a whole story around it, making you feel like you were actually there, witnessing history unfold." Chloe listened intently, her green eyes sparkling with interest, occasionally interjecting with insightful questions. She seemed genuinely fascinated by David's work, his passion for Havenwood, and his unwavering commitment to preserving its heritage. As the hours passed, Alara found herself growing more comfortable with Chloe, sharing anecdotes about David's quirky habits, his love for old books, and his unwavering belief in the importance of community. She spoke of their shared dreams, their quiet evenings spent reading aloud, and the comfortable rhythm of their life together. Chloe carefully avoided personal questions in the initial meetings, focusing instead on David's professional life and his contributions to the community. She asked about his research methods, his favorite historical figures, and his involvement in various local projects. "He was very proud of his work on the Havenwood Mill project," Alara said, a wistful smile gracing her lips. "He spent years piecing together its history, tracking down old photographs and interviewing former employees." "I know," Chloe replied, her voice filled with admiration. "It's an incredible piece of work. I've read his report several times, and I'm constantly amazed by his attention to detail and his passion for the subject." As the interview drew to a close, Chloe thanked Alara profusely for her time and her insights. She packed up her equipment, promising to return the following week for another session. "Thank you, Alara," Chloe said, her green eyes sparkling with sincerity. "You've given me so much to think about. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand David, to see him as a real person, not just a historical figure." Alara smiled, a genuine smile this time, feeling a sense of connection with this young woman who had come into her life so unexpectedly. Perhaps, she thought, sharing her memories of David wouldn't be such a burden after all. Perhaps it would be a way to keep his spirit alive, to ensure that his legacy endured for generations to come. As Chloe left the library, Alara watched her retreating figure, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. Curiosity, apprehension, and a flicker of hope. She couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe's arrival was more than just a coincidence, that there was something more to this young woman than met the eye. And as the rain continued to fall outside, Alara couldn't help but wonder what secrets the future held, and what role Chloe would play in unraveling them. Subtle hints about David's private nature, and his occasional unexplained absences were dropped during the interview, like seeds planted in fertile ground. Alara mentioned his frequent trips to the historical archives in a neighboring town, trips that sometimes stretched for days, and his reluctance to discuss his life before they met. She also recalled a few cryptic phone calls he had received over the years, calls that always seemed to leave him pensive and withdrawn. These were small details, seemingly insignificant at the time, but now, in the light of Chloe's arrival, they took on a new and unsettling significance. Alara found herself looking forward to Chloe's visits. The library, usually a sanctuary of quiet rustling pages and hushed whispers, now buzzed with a different kind of energy whenever Chloe arrived. It wasn't disruptive but enlivening. Chloe possessed a knack for drawing out stories Alara hadn't realized she still held within her, dormant memories awakened by Chloe's genuine curiosity. She saw a reflection of David's own passion for Havenwood's history in Chloe's bright eyes. Their bond deepened over cups of lukewarm library coffee and shared laughter. Alara found herself confiding in Chloe about David's quirks, his endearing absent-mindedness when engrossed in a historical document, the way he would hum old tunes while tending to his rose garden. She spoke of their shared love for Havenwood, their walks along the riverbank, the quiet evenings spent reading by the fire. With each story, Alara felt a sense of lightness, as if she were sharing the burden of her grief, and Chloe was carefully, respectfully, helping her carry it. One afternoon, as the sunlight streamed through the library windows, painting dust motes in the air, Chloe gently steered the conversation in a new direction. "Alara," she began, her voice softer than usual, "you've told me so much about your life with David. I'm curious about his life before you met him. What was he like in his younger years? Did he have any serious relationships?" Alara paused, a faint unease prickling at the back of her neck. She hadn't thought much about David's life before her. He hadn't spoken of it often, and she hadn't pressed him. It had seemed enough to be present in the life they built together. "David wasn't one to dwell on the past," Alara replied slowly, choosing her words with care. "He was focused on the present, on Havenwood. I know he was close to his parents. He mentioned a few friends from school, but—" She trailed off, searching her memory. "He never really spoke of anyone special. I assumed there wasn't anyone." Chloe nodded thoughtfully, her gaze steady. "Did he ever mention any travel he did before you met?" she asked. "Or perhaps any hobbies he had that fell by the wayside?" Alara frowned, trying to recall any such details. "He loved photography, I remember that. He had boxes of old photographs, mostly of Havenwood. And he did go to Europe for a couple of months before we met. But that was years before." "Why do you ask, Chloe?" Chloe hesitated, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her face. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet box, its dark blue fabric worn with age. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, revealing a sapphire ring, its blue stone catching the light. It was identical to the one Alara had lost years ago, a ring David had given her on their 10th anniversary. Alara gasped, her hand flying to her throat. Where did you get that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Chloe took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Alara's with unwavering honesty. "Alara," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "my name is Chloe, and I'm David's daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy and surreal. Alara felt a wave of dizziness wash over her, the library around her blurring at the edges. David? A daughter? It was impossible. David would have told her. Wouldn't he? Chloe continued, her voice filled with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. "I know this is a shock. I didn't want to blindside you, but I didn't know how else to approach this. My mother and David were together for a short time before he met you. He knew about me, but he chose to keep it a secret. He left a trust for me, explained everything in a letter. He said he did it to protect you, that he feared the truth would hurt you too much." Alara stared at Chloe, her mind reeling. The sapphire ring seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a tangible symbol of David's deception. The man she had loved, the man she had shared her life with, had kept this hidden from her. A secret so profound it threatened to shatter the very foundation of their relationship. "Protect me," Alara finally managed to choke out, her voice trembling. "By lying to me for 15 years? By pretending I was the only one?" Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "He loved you, Alara. My mother always said that. He spoke of you with such reverence. He didn't want to cause you pain." "Pain?" Alara felt a bitter laugh rising in her throat. "And this doesn't cause pain? To find out that the man I loved had a whole other life, a child I knew nothing about? That he thought so little of me that he couldn't trust me with the truth?" Chloe reached out a hand, but Alara flinched away. "I didn't come here to hurt you, Alara. I came here because I wanted to know him. I wanted to understand my father. And he loved you. I know he did." Alara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I knew him. I thought we had a life built on honesty and trust. But it was all a lie." She stood up abruptly, pushing her chair back with a screech. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "Just please leave. I need to be alone." Chloe nodded, her face etched with sadness. She carefully closed the velvet box and placed it back in her bag. I understand, she said softly. I'm so sorry, Alara. As Chloe turned to leave, Alara noticed the storm brewing outside. The sky had darkened, and the first fat raindrops were splattering against the library windows, mirroring the tempest raging within her. Wait, Alara said, her voice barely a whisper. Chloe paused at the door, turning back to face her. The ring, Alara said, her gaze fixed on Chloe's hand. Is it really his? Did he give it to your mother? Chloe hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, she said. It was his mother's. He gave it to my mother when I was born. Alara felt another wave of pain wash over her, the realization that David had given the same ring to another woman, a woman who had borne his child. It was too much to bear. Please just go, she said, her voice cracking. I can't look at you right now. Chloe nodded again and slipped out of the library, leaving Alara alone with her shattered memories and the deafening silence of her grief. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows, a mournful soundtrack to her broken heart. Alara wandered through her house like a ghost, the sapphire ring Chloe had left behind a heavy weight in her pocket. Each familiar object, David's worn armchair, the bookshelf overflowing with his beloved local history texts, the framed photograph of them on their wedding day, now seemed tainted, viewed through the lens of Chloe's revelation. The comfortable reality she had meticulously constructed over the past 2 decades had crumbled, leaving her adrift in a sea of doubt and confusion. Sleep offered no escape. She tossed and turned, replaying moments from her marriage, searching for clues she had missed, subtle hints of the other life David had led. Had he flinched when a young woman walked past? Had he ever lingered too long over a photograph in the newspaper? The questions swirled in her mind, relentless and unforgiving. The next morning, the library felt alien. Surrounded by the comforting scent of aged paper and the quiet murmur of readers, Alara felt utterly alone. She tried to focus on shelving books, but her hands trembled, and her thoughts kept drifting back to Chloe, to David, to the life she thought she knew. The sapphire ring, a tangible symbol of David's deceit, burned a hole in her pocket, a constant reminder of the shattered trust. It was bad enough that David had kept this secret, but the fact that he had given Chloe's mother an identical ring, a ring he had initially given to Alara, felt like a cruel twist of the knife. She couldn't bring herself to speak to Ben. How could she explain that the father he adored, the man who had taught him to ride a bike and patiently helped him with his homework, had harbored such a significant secret? She imagined the hurt and confusion in his eyes, and the words caught in her throat. Ben had always seen David as a hero, a perfect father figure. To shatter that image felt like a betrayal of her own. The ring lay on her bedside table, mocking her. She picked it up, the cool sapphire smooth beneath her fingertips. It was beautiful, undeniably so, but now it was a symbol of pain and deception. She considered throwing it away, burying it in the garden, anything to rid herself of its presence. But she couldn't. It was a part of David, a piece of the puzzle she desperately needed to understand. Ben called that evening, his voice filled with concern. Mom, are you okay? You sound off. Alara hesitated. I'm fine, Ben. Just a bit tired. Tired? You never sound this tired. Is everything all right at the library? She knew she couldn't keep it from him forever. The longer she waited, the harder it would be. Taking a deep breath, she said, Ben, could you come home? There's something I need to tell you. His voice sharpened with worry. Of course, Mom. I'll be there tomorrow. The following day crawled by. Alara barely touched her lunch, her stomach churning with anxiety. She closed the library early, unable to face the curious glances of the townspeople. The rain started again, mirroring the storm raging inside her. Ben arrived late afternoon, his brow furrowed with concern. He wrapped her in a hug. Mom, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Alara led him to the living room, where the sapphire ring sat on the coffee table, gleaming under the lamplight. She gestured towards it. This is part of it. Ben picked up the ring, examining it. It's beautiful. Where did you find it? Chloe, she gave it to me. Alara's voice trembled. Chloe? The woman writing about Dad. Alara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She's David's daughter. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ben stared at the ring, then at Alara, his expression a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Dad had a daughter? But a how? When? Alara recounted everything Chloe had told her. The affair before they met, the secret she had kept for 20 years, the identical ring given to Chloe's mother. As she spoke, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. It was as if the telling of the story had drained the last of her strength. Ben listened in silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. When she finished, he sat back, running a hand through his hair. I don't understand. Dad would never. That's what I thought too, Ben, Alara said, her voice barely a whisper. That's what I thought. A flashback flickered in Alara's mind. Ben was perhaps 10 years old, engrossed in a Lego project on the living room floor. David had been on the phone, his voice low and hushed. When Alara entered the room, he had abruptly ended the call, his face flushed. Wrong number, he had said, too quickly, too casually. At the time she hadn't thought anything of it. Now the memory resonated with a chilling clarity. It was a chink in the armor, a glimpse into the secret life David had so carefully concealed. Ben got up and paced the room, his energy restless. This changes everything, he said, his voice tight. Everything I thought I knew about him. I know, Alara said, her voice cracking. I feel the same way. Ben stopped pacing and looked at his mother, his eyes filled with concern. How are you holding up, Mom? I don't know, she admitted. I feel betrayed. Like he lied to me for our entire marriage. Maybe he thought he was protecting you, Ben said, his voice softer now. Protecting me? By living a lie? By keeping his own daughter a secret? Alara's voice rose, laced with bitterness. How is that protecting me? Ben knelt beside her, taking her hand. I'm not saying it was right, Mom, but maybe he was afraid of hurting you. Maybe he thought it was better to keep it hidden than to risk losing you. Alara looked at her son, seeing not the boy she had raised, but a mature, understanding man. And what about Chloe? She asked. Didn't she deserve to know her father? Didn't she deserve to be a part of his life? She did, Ben said, his voice firm. And maybe it's not too late for that. Alara stared at him, her eyes wide with surprise. What do you mean? I mean, maybe you should talk to her again, Mom. Talk to her? After everything she's revealed? After the pain she's caused? I know it's hard, Ben said, squeezing her hand. But think about it. She's lost her father too. And she's reaching out, trying to connect. Maybe there's something you can both gain from this. Alara looked at her son, her heart aching with a mixture of grief and gratitude. Ben had always been her rock, her source of strength. And now, even in the face of this devastating revelation, he was offering her a path towards healing, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. I don't know, Ben, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, Mom, Ben said, his eyes filled with love and reassurance. You're the strongest person I know. And I'll be here for you every step of the way. He paused, then added, Maybe I should be there too. When you talk to her. Alara looked at her son, a fragile smile gracing her lips. Maybe you should, she said. Maybe you should. The rain continued to fall outside, but for the first time since Chloe's arrival, Alara felt a flicker of warmth, a tiny spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, something good could come from this unexpected turn of events. Emboldened by Ben's unwavering support, Alara found a strength she didn't know she possessed. The cafe, the Daily Grind, was a local favorite, known for its strong coffee and even stronger sense of community. It was neutral ground, a place where beginnings were brewed daily. She chose a table near the window, the morning sun casting a warm glow on the checkered tablecloth. Alara arrived 15 minutes early, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. She ordered a chamomile tea, hoping its calming properties would kick in before Chloe arrived. Ben had offered to come, to act as a buffer, but Alara had declined. This was something she needed to do herself, a step towards understanding, towards acceptance, or perhaps towards closure. Chloe arrived precisely on time, her usual bright demeanor slightly subdued. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a worn leather satchel slung across her shoulder. As she approached the table, Alara noticed the resemblance to David, the set of her jaw, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. It was unsettling and comforting all at once. Alara, Chloe said softly, her voice filled with a mix of nervousness and hope. Thank you for meeting me. Alara managed a weak smile. Thank you for coming, Chloe. An awkward silence descended, filled only by the clinking of coffee cups and the murmur of conversations around them. Alara took a sip of her tea, the warmth spreading through her. I imagine this isn't easy, Chloe finally said, breaking the silence. For either of us. No, Alara agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. It isn't. I understand if you're angry, Chloe continued, her gaze steady. I know this has turned your life upside down. I never intended to cause you pain. My only intention was to know my father. Alara looked at Chloe, really looked at her. She saw not a threat, not a homewrecker, but a young woman searching for her place in the world. A woman who had been denied the chance to know her father. I was angry, Alara admitted. Devastated, really. I felt like my entire marriage had been a lie. But Ben helped me see things differently. He said that David probably thought he was protecting me. Chloe nodded slowly. He always worried about hurting people. My mother. She understood. She never wanted to come between him and you. She knew he loved you. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. Alara thought of David, his quiet strength, his unwavering devotion. Could she reconcile the man she knew with the man who had kept such a significant secret? The ring. Alara began, her voice catching in her throat. Why did he give you the same ring? Chloe reached into her satchel and pulled out the velvet box. She opened it, revealing the sapphire ring, identical to the one Alara had lost. My mother said he gave it to her as a promise, Chloe explained. A promise that he would always be there for her, in whatever way he could. It wasn't meant to replace you, Alara. It was meant to be a symbol of his commitment to me. Alara stared at the ring, its deep blue color reflecting the sadness in her heart. It was a symbol of a life she knew nothing about, a life that had existed alongside hers, hidden in the shadows. I don't know if I can ever fully understand, Alara said, her voice trembling. But I'm willing to try. For David. And for you. A flicker of hope ignited in Chloe's eyes. Thank you, Alara. That means more than you know. They talked for hours, sharing memories of David. Chloe spoke of his visits, his stories about Havenwood's history, his quiet encouragement of her artistic pursuits. Alara shared anecdotes about their life together, his love for books, his dedication to the library, his gentle nature. As they talked, a picture of David began to emerge, a more complete, more complex picture than Alara had ever imagined. By the time they left the cafe, the sun was high in the sky. The tension that had filled the air earlier had dissipated, replaced by a fragile sense of connection. Ben wanted to come, Alara said as they stood outside the cafe. But I wanted to do this on my own. Perhaps we could all meet sometime? The three of us. Chloe smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached her eyes. I'd like that very much, Alara. The meeting with Ben and Chloe took place a few days later at Alara's house. Ben, ever the pragmatist, had baked a coffee cake, a gesture that immediately eased the tension. He greeted Chloe with a warm hug, his easygoing nature putting her at ease. The conversation flowed more easily than Alara had anticipated. They talked about David, of course, sharing stories and memories, piecing together the fragments of his life. Ben shared anecdotes from his childhood, painting a picture of David as a loving and supportive father. Chloe spoke of his passion for history, his dedication to preserving Havenwood's heritage. As they talked, Alara noticed a common thread running through their stories: David's unwavering commitment to the people he loved. He had loved Alara, deeply and completely, but he had also loved Chloe in a different way, a protective and paternal love. He would have been so proud of you both, Alara said, her voice filled with emotion. He would have wanted you to know each other. An idea sparked in Ben's mind. We should do something to honor him, he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Something that reflects his passion for history and his love for Havenwood. Chloe nodded enthusiastically. Like what? What about a memorial at the library? Ben suggested. A display showcasing his research, his articles, his photographs. We could call it David's Corner, or something like that. Alara's heart swelled with emotion. It was the perfect idea. A lasting tribute to David, a way to honor his memory and share his legacy with the community he had loved so much. "I love it," Alara said, her voice choked with tears. "It's exactly what he would have wanted." And so the plans for the memorial began to take shape. Alara, Ben, and Chloe worked together, poring over David's papers, organizing his research, selecting photographs for the display. It was a labor of love, a way to connect with David and with each other. The memorial event was held on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The library was packed with people. Friends, neighbors, local historians, all gathered to celebrate David's life. Alara stood beside Ben and Chloe, her heart filled with a mix of sadness and joy. Ben spoke first, sharing anecdotes about his father's love for history and his unwavering support. Chloe spoke next, her voice filled with emotion as she described David's influence on her life and her artistic pursuits. Finally, Alara took the podium, her voice trembling as she spoke of David's kindness, his gentleness, and his enduring legacy. "David was a private man," Alara said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "He kept secrets, yes, but he was also a man of great love and great compassion. He loved this town, he loved this library, and he loved the people in it. And he would have been so proud to see us all here today, honoring his memory." As she finished speaking, a wave of applause filled the library. Alara looked at Ben and Chloe, their faces beaming with pride. They had done it. They had honored David's memory, they had found common ground, and they had created a new family. The sun shone brightly on the event, casting a warm glow on the faces of the attendees. Alara, Chloe, and Ben stood together, talking among the crowd, their laughter mingling with the murmur of conversations. Alara looked at them, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. She had lost a husband, but she had gained a daughter and strengthened her bond with her son. Life had taken an unexpected turn, but she had embraced it, and in doing so she had found a richer, more fulfilling future. The life lesson was clear. Even when we think we know ourselves and those closest to us completely, life can bring unexpected turns, and forgiveness and embracing the unknown can lead to unexpected connections and a richer, more fulfilling future. And as Alara looked towards the future, she knew that David would always be with them, his memory living on in their hearts and in the walls of the Havenwood Library.